Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to share with you how to generate topics for content marketing on social media or podcasts. So content marketing basically is just really simply creating content of any sort and getting it out there to the world, getting it out there to your audience, and doing it on a consistent basis where the idea isn't, sometimes the word marketing is used to sort of think about sales and selling something. With content marketing, we aren't necessarily selling anything other than our own ideas, our own information, our own, content, for lack of a better word. And so the fact of the matter is, it's not so much about necessarily monetizing it, that can come or not. But content marketing in and of itself is just the idea of creating the content and getting it out there. And, it's something that obviously a lot of people have done. Some have done it to tremendous success. A lot of people do it and start off and then they don't continue to do it. And, that's because it's not a short-term strategy. It's something that takes a little bit of effort. It takes a lot of consistency and it takes time in order to get it done. So why is it important in the first place? And, why is it valuable? Why should we even be doing it? If we don't expect to be some major influencer or something like that where we're going to make tons of money, or we don't think that that's going to be possible overnight, what is even the value in doing it? Well, actually, content marketing, in my opinion, is one of the most important and most valuable things that you can do with your time at all online these days. And I'm somebody who resisted doing this for a long time. I avoided social media. I never really did any content stuff, but I've come around in the last, year to 2 years, because the fact of the matter is, what we're seeing on the internet, what we're seeing in the digital age here, is that being able to build a brand and a following is by far the most important thing. The fact of the matter is, whether or not we want to do it, whatever media, whether we want to use, or medium, whether we want to use video, whether we want to use audio, whether we want to use images or text or whatever else, as a blogger or whatever, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're creating content, we're doing it consistently, and that we're getting it out there. And again, how we get it out there doesn't matter. Whether we're using YouTube or a social media platform, whether we're doing a podcast, whether we have a blog on WordPress or whatever else. But the fact of the matter is, however we choose to do it, it's vitally important that anybody who's trying to accomplish anything online does that, because it's the fact of the matter is, it's the best way to be able to build a brand, build an audience, and allow people to understand who we are without needing to get into the super competitive landscape of advertising and stuff like that where you need a massive budget. So particularly any entrepreneur or anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, even if you don't have a product created yet, now is actually the time to get started. Because if you build your audience first, if you build your brand first, it's a lot easier to make sales down the road, and it requires a lot less heavy marketing, and it requires a lot less sort of banging people over the head with your message. And so no matter what we choose to do it, and no matter how we choose to do it, what ultimately ends up happening for most people is they get a really good idea. They're motivated, they have the best intentions, and they start off and they start to do some content. They set up a social media profile, or they start a podcast, or they start a blog or a vlog or whatever. They start doing it, they start posting it, and when they don't get results right away, then they ultimately give up, because what they realize is it's actually a lot of work. And, much like the old adage about the locomotive and how much energy it takes to get it going, or like the rocket ship, right? To blast it off, 75% of the rocket that blasts off is fuel, because it needs all of that energy to get it going. Once you get the rocket into the atmosphere, it can shed all of that and it can float by itself. And social media, content marketing, podcasting, it's all the same kind of thing. The idea is it takes a tremendous amount of work and effort up front without any return on investment. You don't make any money. If anything, it costs money. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy. But if you build it and you do it the right way, the payoff down the line can be massive and it can be continuous. And so The issue is, and the reason most people start and then they give up, is because they start off strong, they have good intentions, and a couple things happen. Number one, they're not getting the results that they want. I posted a lot of podcast episodes. I had very few listeners. I posted, some social media stuff, had very few, people commenting or liking or sharing or any of that kind of stuff, right? Very few people were engaging. And that's because regardless of how good your content is, it's a very crowded marketplace. It takes a while. It takes a lot of consistency. There's a reason that McDonald's runs ads every single day. There's not a person on the planet probably that doesn't know what McDonald's is. But they have to keep running it in order to keep it in front of our minds. Because otherwise, other marketing messages and other companies and other options would come to the forefront of our minds. We wouldn't think about it, and their sales would drop. And they are aware of that, even though they have a brand name that everybody recognizes. Coca-Cola, same thing. Insert brand name here, right? They all have to do the same thing. But part of the challenge is when we start to put stuff out there and we don't get any results, it can be a little discouraging, and so we don't feel like we want to keep doing it, or we don't think anything that we have to offer is valuable because people didn't instantly respond to it. Neither one of those things are true. But the other challenge that people have is sometimes they even have sort of the drive to keep going. And they're gonna work it long, and they know that it's a long-term prospect. So they're not looking for immediate results. But the problem is they start going and they go to all of their low-hanging fruit topics. So they knock out a few topics on things that they want to do. And then they start to wonder, okay, well now what? I ran out of topics. I don't really know what else to talk about. I don't know what other content to make. I'm not really getting great results anyway. Maybe nobody's really interested in what I have to offer. Maybe it's, but I actually liken this a lot to the financial services industry. In financial services, like financial planning, they hire a lot of people. And they hire a lot of people that come in, and it's basically a sales job. And it benefits them whether those people stick with the job or not, because what they do is they teach you to start off by pitching your friends and family. It's really good. It allows you to get comfortable with the script and understand all of our products and stuff. But it also gets them new clients because your parents, your cousins, your uncle, whatever, your kids or whatever it is, they all want to help you. So, your friends, your neighbors, if they don't already have a financial planner, they're going to sign up with you. They're going to do that. And then what happens for most financial planners is as soon as they run out of their personal network, they're out of business. Because unless they're going to start making cold calls, it's the same idea with the content. So we run out of our immediate topics right away, even though we have a lot of good ones right on the top of our head. And then it's sort of like, what do we do there? So the question becomes, how do we create enough topics? How do we ultimately, let's assume for a minute that we can buy into the idea that we're going to need to do this for the long haul, right? We have to commit 6 months to a year at least and just accept that before we expect any results at all. I'm not even talking about monetization. I'm just talking about viral sharing, engagement, stuff like that, right? So I started a podcast in August of 2023. And it took me a few months, to get really any traction. And, I don't, at this current day, I'm not focused on where it's going to go. I'm just trying to grow it as big as I can and reach as many people as I can. And, I can say that it's definitely started to grow and started to get some real traction. But it takes time in the beginning. So let's just assume that we've bought into that. We're on board. So the question becomes, okay, I've got my short list of topics. I crank through those. Now what do I do? Well, I can speak to this personally because I'm doing a daily podcast. So it's 5 episodes a week. It takes a lot more content than it does to post an image online to create a full podcast. And I'm a solo host. A lot of people, the sort of the low-hanging fruit is to run out and just interview a bunch of people. And there's value in that for sure. But what I wanted to do is make sure that I had a voice with my audience, that I shared my experience and my knowledge because I felt as though that was the most important thing. And I want to add in interviews, and I want to start adding that in to add depth to the content and everything else and get other people's perspectives. But I wanted to make sure that I was able to share enough and bond enough with everybody because of the fact that I feel like I understand the loneliness of the entrepreneur. I understand the challenges. I understand what it's like to come from, basically, nothing and try to build that. And so I want to be able to help. I want to be able to reach out, encourage people, and let them know, look, you could do this. You just got to stick with it. And so interviewing is one way that people would do it. But basically, with a daily podcast, I've had to come up with content every single day for I'm coming around on my first year. So it's hundreds of episodes, right? And so the first most important thing that I would say in terms of creating content, even before we get to the content itself, is to understand and know your audience. I can't overstate this, right? The fact of the matter is, if we go into it from the perspective of thinking about ourselves and what we know, so we just want to put that information out there, the challenge or the problem with that is it might not be connected to any one theme. So one thing we might say might relate to somebody, but the majority of it might not. And then this might relate to somebody else. And there's always going to be segments of your market and your audience that certain episodes strike a better chord with than others, and that's fine. But if we don't even know who we're talking to, adults, kids, business owners, like married couples, like, athletes, like whatever it is, we've got to have some kind of idea of who our audience is that we're trying to reach. And the beautiful thing about this is that's our choice. Your choice is what audience you want to reach. That's the whole point. And it's got to be an audience that you resonate with and that you're excited to talk to and be with all the time, because that's what you're going to be doing. So that's what we start ourselves off with, is figuring out what audience can we serve? Who can we provide value for? What information, what do we have to offer that to who would that be valuable, right? If I don't know anything about, dog training, and I want to do a podcast or content marketing on dogs, well, I'm not going to be very much use to anybody because I don't know anything about it and I'm not passionate about it, right? So we want to focus on something where we think we can actually provide real value to start with. And the clearer idea that we have, the more targeted our content will be and the better results we're going to get. Then people are going to figure that out. So if on the flip side of it, we are somebody who, we have a dog and it's sort of a hobby or whatever, but, we sort of got pretty good at training him and, figuring out some little like hacks for this, that, and the other thing. And, people sometimes comment on how well behaved our dog is. And, we hear about other people struggling or see them getting pulled down the street on the leash. Well, maybe we've got something. Maybe that's something, if we love it and we're passionate about it, maybe we want to help people that struggle with their dogs, that want to be dog owners but don't really know what they're doing. Something that we're passionate about, experienced with, or whatever, and we want to build our audience around that. So whatever value we think we can offer, and we start with that, we think about who that would best serve, and that is our audience. And the clearer idea we can get, the better, right? For me, podcast for entrepreneurs, because I know what the deal is with entrepreneurship. Now, you could be young, you could be old, you could be married, you could be single, you could be like anything. It doesn't really matter. You can live in the United States, you can live, in Asia, where it doesn't matter, because ultimately the entrepreneurship stuff that we're talking about is universal, right? It definitely skews more toward the digital online marketing, but I cover everything because that's essentially what I've done and what I've lived, and that's what I want to share, and I feel those are the people I can reach and serve. And then the second thing is, and this is really important also, what impact do you want to have? It doesn't have to be one or the other, but do you want to inspire people? Is that the whole point? Like, you've come through some struggle and now you want to be able to inspire other people to do it? Part of it for me is that. Do you want to motivate people? Maybe you're an excellent motivator and your whole thing is, you're a fitness guru and a lot of people want to get in shape, but they just don't have the motivation. So you want content that's going to motivate them and get them going. Do you want to entertain people? Maybe you're funny. Maybe you have a great sense of humor and, the whole value that you could provide is make people laugh. We could use more laughter in society today and in life today. There's so much negativity everywhere. Anything that brings levity or any sort of brightness or sunshine or comedy to anything is great. So maybe you can entertain people. Maybe you're good at impressions or jokes or whatever. Educate people. Maybe you have skills or you have a particular area of expertise that you're very good at, if you could teach, would be something other people would want to learn and benefit from, like the dog training example we gave. Maybe all of these. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but we need to have an idea of what our point is in terms of what we're offering. The end game, despite the fact that we might want to monetize this and make a living on it, that can't be the end game. That is the sort of result or the byproduct of creating the content and building the audience. If you don't have good content and you don't build an audience, the rest of it's never going to happen anyway. So what we want to start with is, what is our goal to improve our audience's lives, who we're trying to reach, what benefit can we provide them? And then the benefits for us will come as a result of that. So once we've got sort of some clarity on that, let's talk about some sources for content, because this is really important. Number one, first and foremost, without question, and don't underestimate this, is your personal experiences and observations. When I started the podcast, my first thought was, especially when you put out a few episodes and there's nobody watching, nobody listening, does anybody really care what I think? Does anybody really, is there really any value in this? First of all, you are a unique individual, and there's not another person like you on the entire planet. There's not one other person that's lived your life, had your experiences, thinks your thoughts, any of those other things. That in and of itself gives you inherent value. It gives you something to offer other people that they want. I love to hear from other entrepreneurs what their stories are, what their successes are, what their challenges are. Not because they can't teach me anything or I know more than them or whatever. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that I'm fascinated by other people's stories, and so are everybody else. That's why movies, that's why books, that's why this stuff is so popular, because people want to know other people's stories. So your own personal experiences and observations have a ton of value, and in fact, the maximum amount of value in the days of AI. Everything's going AI, and it's all sort of sterile and stiff, and it's grammatically correct, but there's no flavor, there's no juice to it, because there's no personal experience attached to it. So that is where you have something that absolutely stands out. Take advantage of that. The second thing is your professional experience. Whatever you've done in your job, you don't need to be an entrepreneur. I reference jobs I've had all the time on an entrepreneurship podcast, because the fact of the matter is there's still lessons to be learned. There's things that can be gleaned from experiences that we've had in our personal lives and our professional lives, right? And our careers. A third source of content is stories. Any story that you can tell, any story that you've heard. I tell stories on my podcast that I didn't make up, that I've heard from other people, and I give them credit where credit's due if I can, if I remember or I know who said it or who, but stories fascinate people. And so I love to share stories, and I think any stories that you know and can think about or can retell that captivated you are going to captivate other people too. A fourth area that's a great source for content is current events. Anything that's currently going on. The Oscars happened, I made an episode about the Oscars. The Super Bowl happened, I made an episode about the Super Bowl, because it's current events. It's stuff people are interested in today anyway. So if we can then put our own spin, our own hook on that to give value to our audience, fantastic. Current events are great for that. A fifth source of content is movies, books, news, and media. Look, I bash the news all the time. I think it's way too focused on all the negative stuff. But the fact of the matter is there are stories in there, and we can hook on to some of that stuff. Anything in the media, anything in movies, books. You read a great book, you see a great movie. What can you take from that? What can you share from that that's going to help? That's going to serve your audience, right? And hit them in a way that it's going to provide value in those areas we talked about: entertainment, education, inspiration, motivation, whatever, right? Movies, books, news, media. So we should always be consuming our own content. The sixth source is interviews. When in doubt, book some interviews. Interview some people you know. They don't need to be famous, but interview some people you know that are experts on the topic or that have an interesting, or other people that are entertaining or educational or whatever, inspirational. And any advice you've received from other people. I shared advice that I've gotten from my high school track coach. I've shared advice that I've gotten from people in the business world, whatever. Because if it's advice and it's stuck with me, it'll resonate with other people. A seventh source of content is any tips, tricks, tactics, and processes. Whatever you're doing in your life, whether it's a shopping list thing for the grocery store, whether it's something in business or entrepreneurship or whatever, whether it's a dog walking trick, whatever it is, if it's a tip, it's a trick, it's a hack, it's a tactic, it's a process, share those things. People love that, and it gives them shortcuts to the results that they want. If you've figured out ways to get results for things faster, easier, better, then share that by all means. An eighth source of content is reviews and walkthroughs. Again, if you're in doubt, buy a product, test out a service that your viewers or your audience would like, and review it. Save them the trouble of having to go through it all themselves. Give them a walkthrough, an unboxing, if you will, or whatever else, so they get the actual experience of what it is and they get your opinion. They may or may not buy it anyway, but the fact is you're helping them make a decision, and that is helpful. That's beneficial. And a ninth source is a day in the life. When in doubt, like I said, your own personal experience is interesting to people. There are people literally with YouTube channels where all they do is the camera follows them around all day. It's boring, but people are engaged. People love it. We used to have a really famous video camera thing here where I live in Connecticut. There was a hawk's nest on the state capitol building for years. And they literally had a live video feed on TV of these hawks sitting in the nest 24 hours a day. And people tuned in. It was like, in today's day and age, they'd consider it viral. Like, it was nuts. People were tuning in to watch these hawks sit in the nest. And then one gets up, he flies off, and then he comes back. And that's all it was. Oh, now there's eggs, and the eggs are going to hatch. It was just a day in the life, but people loved it. So those are always really, really valuable topics. And anything and everything you think will benefit and or interest your audience, there is no right or wrong answer. So the takeaway here is that content marketing, no matter what we want to call it, serves a lot of purposes. It builds our personal or company brand. It builds a following. It engages our audience. It gives us credibility and authority on our topic. And it creates a market interested in what we have to offer. The value of doing it is without question, but the process is hard and takes a lot of time and energy. The more passion we pour into our content creation, the better it'll be received, the more people will engage with it, and the better result we'll get. There are a lot of ways to come up with topics to cover, and it's important that we build a pipeline of them so we always have some value to offer.